Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for tuning into the Secure the Perimeter podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk to entrepreneurs. We're going to talk to young business owners on how they can raise capital for their business. This, to most entrepreneurs, is the most critical thing they deal with on a day-to-day basis. Raising capital, having enough runway to get your business off the ground and in the air. And it's very arduous. It's very hard. And there are a lot of requirements that come with raising capital. So I want you to tune into this episode, pay attention, take notes, ask a lot of questions. Feel free to drop comments down below. Please subscribe to our channel as well, as it helps us to get the content out there that's relevant to other entrepreneurs and people that want to secure the perimeter of their life.
Welcome to the Secure the Perimeter podcast.
Welcome to this episode of Secure the Perimeter podcast. This episode is a little bit different than our normal podcast because this podcast is talking directly to entrepreneurs that have either thought about starting a business, so brand new entrepreneurs, or maybe this is related to entrepreneurs that has started their business but is still having issues with cash and a sustainable business model for their business. So we're going to talk about 8 main ways that you can raise capital. And typically on the Secure the Perimeter podcast, we're talking about ways and areas in which you can secure the perimeter of your life, your business, your family, your faith. This one in particular, I think, is very valuable to entrepreneurs because a lot of entrepreneurs don't know where to begin as it pertains to raising capital. Capital is necessary. Capital is funding. It's the way that you basically build a sustainable business model to give yourself enough what they call runway to get you off the runway and get you up in the air and flying and soaring like the eagles. So today we're going to talk about 8 main ways you can raise capital. And these are not the only ways, but they're the most popular ways. And we'll talk a little bit about the pros and cons relating to each. So we'll get right into it. Number one. The number one most popular method in raising capital for a business is through equity financing. Equity financing is really pertaining to angel investors. It's pertaining to private equity firms or venture capital firms, or even potentially IPO. And if IPO is kind of complex because we're talking about the stock market. And differences between these three are angel investors are people that probably have had a business in the past, or they ran into some money through some kind of gift that they received, or maybe they're an heir of a large sum of money. But angel investors are people that are they have a lot of liquid capital and they're just going to give you a loan to start your business. Some angel investors do not require repayment. However, they want some kind of equity stake in your business. Angel investors are sometimes the best way to go if you're talking or relating to equity financing. If you're dealing with maybe if you're talking about IPO and you're thinking about going public, then basically what you do is you sell stocks or shares of your business to the regular stock market, which are just people walking down the street that says, "Hey, you got a great business. I want to invest in your business." And they essentially own a slice of the pie. They own a small piece of the business. And so what that, you deal with the stocks and the trades commission. Basically what happens is you offer up a certain amount of shares for a certain price. And it's kind of a complex model because you talk about shares and what that pertains to in relating to what the cost is of each share, and that's evaluated, and it's a whole thing. Most people don't do IPO, especially right out of the gate, because you've got to really build a model and you've got to get the business going, and then you can essentially go public as you grow, because you're growing so rapidly and so fast. You're outpacing lines of credit and term loans. And we'll get into that here in a few minutes. If you're talking about venture capital firms, you have to be very cautious about venture capital firms because you can get into very complex contracts with venture capital firms where there is repayment requirements, or they dilute your equity by taking ownership of the business in percentages. And typically those percentages are anywhere from 20 to 50% ownership. Be very cautious about this. You have to read the contract, and I would highly recommend hiring legal counsel to review that with you that has experience. Do not hire regular attorneys to review these contracts because they may not be able to navigate the waters with these contracts very well for you. So in a lot of cases, pros to these three options under equity investment is there may or may not be repayment obligations. The cons are that you could dilute your equity in the business, and if you dilute your equity, your ownership, you also will equally dilute your control of the business. Be very cautious about that. But that's the bait and switch of equity ownership. Number 2, debt financing. This is traditional debt financing. You're borrowing money, whether it's a line of credit, which means you're going to have an up to amount that you can use. And typically lines of credit come with repayment at an interest rate over a period of time. And a lot of line of credit agreements pertain to you're going to repay it at a certain interest rate, and typically these ride what the market's interest rates can bear. Right now, you all know that interest rates are on the high side, and so it doesn't. There's not a lot of advantages to running out there and getting a line of credit or even a term loan at this time. Term loans, you're borrowing money and you're putting up collateral. Simple as that. You're borrowing money, and there is a monthly repayment schedule at a certain interest rate, and you're putting up collateral with that term loan saying, I'm going to borrow X amount of dollars, $50,000, $100,000, and I'm going to put up my mortgage on my house. I'm going to put up, property that I own. I'm going to put up assets that I have. Typically on term loans, the hard assets that the bank is going to take, or typical lenders are going to take, is going to be a mortgage on a house. They're going to take property as collateral. This is a bad idea. I will just say it's a bad idea for me because if something goes south with that business, you guessed it, they're taking your assets, they're taking your collateral. They're going to seize the house, they're going to seize the property until they're made whole with the money that they've loaned you. So try hard not to give up collateral if you don't have to. And again, with traditional lenders and lines of credit, it could be potentially unavoidable because they're going to want some kind of collateral for the money. Number 3, the number 3 method, or the third method that you can do to raise capital in your business is bootstrap. What do I mean by bootstrap? You've probably heard the term. If you have not heard of the term, bootstrapping is basically using your own cash, your own capital, your own money or assets you sell off to raise money to then reinvest back in your business. Bootstrapping is arduous. It is probably one of the most secure methods you can use to raise capital for your business because you're putting up your own assets, your own collateral, your own cash, but it's going to take you a lot longer to grow your business if you only have, a few $1,000s in the bank, or you're working with a very limited amount of funding or capital. Bootstrapping is the way I grew my business initially. It is not the fastest way to grow your business, but again, it's probably one of the most secure ways you can grow your business. The fourth way that you can raise capital is through grants and subsidies, meaning you can apply for grants through your state government, your state or your federal government, your state government, your federal government, and that could be a very long and arduous process. Grants, the pros to grants are there's no repayment obligation to grants. If you're awarded a grant, it's basically free money. you can use to grow your business. And when you're dealing with grants really are aligned to minority-owned businesses. Grants are aligned to maybe evolving technologies that the government wants to see or encourage more of. There are a lot of opportunities for grants, but it is a long and arduous process. And the cons to grants are it could come with a lot of restrictions and a lot of guidelines that you have to follow. And if you don't follow, you got to give the money back to the government. So be cautious about that. But grants are also a good way to raise capital for your business. Revenue-based financing. In other words, you've started your business and you're running into cash flow issues. You don't have a lot of capital to grow or expand. There's demand there, but you just don't have the money to grow. So you can use revenue-based financing to grow your business. And revenue-based financing is basically essentially tied directly to the performance of your business. How much revenue have you generated this month? If you've generated $5,000 in revenue for the month, you're not going to get a lot of financing for $5,000. If you're up to $50,000, you might get a little more revenue-based financing where they're gonna give you a percentage of your revenue. So it's tied directly to your performance. The pros of that is it's aligned with your performance, and that's really low risk for a lender. So they're more apt to give you revenue-based financing. The cons to that are it's tied to your performance, and if your performance is not great in your business, you're not going to get a lot of revenue-based funding. There's a lot of positives and negatives to revenue-based financing. What I have found is it comes with higher interest rates. It's just something you're going to have to bear, so you better have the margin baked in. And we can talk about funding and financing and understanding your money as a lot of business owners talk about having an accounting understanding or background. Guys, listen, I'm going to pause here for a minute, and I'm going to highly encourage you to go to a local community college and take a basic accounting class for business. You may not have the money to invest in a Harvard degree, and maybe you don't come from Harvard. Maybe some of you have, a degree in something. But if you don't have an understanding of accounting, I'd highly encourage you to do that, because it really, really will benefit you a lot as it comes to understanding the financials of a business. There's a difference between a balance sheet and a P&L being a profit and loss sheet. There's a difference in understanding your asset categories, depreciation and amortization, and all the things that go into business finances. So please go out, do yourself a favor, take a college class at a local community college and understand the basic principles of accounting. All right, we'll get back into it. The sixth way you can raise money or capital for your company or your business is crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is kind of a newer concept that's evolved over the last 5 or 10 years. Crowdfunding basically is you're giving up different, attributes or incentives for your business. Say you make a product, you give away certain incentives for your business in exchange for raising revenue from a large group of people for your business. So maybe you give them exclusive rights to your product or your service in exchange for some funding. Crowdfunding is a thing. It is real. It is possible, but you risk the chance of not raising any funding at all. And so it's also a long and arduous process, but could be a resource for you. I don't have a lot of experience with crowdfunding. I did not use a crowdfunding resource for growing capital for my own company. So the seventh way that you can raise capital for your business is through strategic partnerships. This also, I feel, is a very solid way, but strategic partnerships means that you essentially get alignment with bigger organizations that is aligned with your product or service, that could essentially kind of help you pave the way with utilizing your product or service or finding the markets or already having the established markets for you that could basically source your product or service directly to the markets that they already serve. This is a great way to grow business, and I highly recommend strategic partnerships. And you can get into all kinds of things here with a strategic business contract with some kind of joint venture agreement. There's all kinds of different legal things that you can get into as it pertains to strategic partnerships, but understand that these often require complex agreements, meaning the company's going to either put up the money, or they're going to give you, or they're going to be a resource for your product or service, but it's going to come with terms and conditions. Make no mistake about that. There's nothing such as free money out there, okay? Even grants require terms and conditions. So strategic partnerships. So find a company or organization that's kind of aligned with your market that you're involved in with either your product or service, and seek out strategic partnerships. The last way that you can essentially raise capital or funding for your company is asset financing. Asset-based financing requires you to tie the funding that you're going to receive directly to your inventory or your assets that you own. This is similar to a standard term loan with a bank. It's similar to a line of credit with a bank or lending agency, but it will also come with higher interest rates, and repayment schedules can require that you pay the principal at the end of the term. In other words, if you're borrowing funding or money from an entity that offers asset-based financing, I regard these guys as sharks, money sharks. No better way to put it. They essentially are going to loan you money, but they're going to require full repayment at the end of the term and interest payments on a regular payment schedule through the process. So in other words, they're going to charge you interest payments on a regular scheduled basis, and at the end of the term, they're going to want full repayment. And again, the collateral you're putting up is your direct inventory and equipment. Here's what I'm going to say about asset-based financing. This is a very complex model. It's complicated, and you've got to be very cautious, because if you have a product that you offer, that product is your inventory. If you sell a gizmo off your shelf, you're going to have to follow strict guidelines about asset-based financing lenders, because you're not allowed to sell it without authorization or making them aware of you've sold X amount of gizmos at this price. They want to see it. They want performance reports on an incremental basis to see how many of those gizmos you've sold, because they're going to require repayment based on that performance. So it's a very slippery slope. Be very cautious about asset-based financing. If you don't have experience, sit down with someone who has experience with that, and 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to dissuade you from doing asset-based financing based on the terms and conditions that's required of you. So I hope this has been of value to you out there as young entrepreneurs. If you're growing a business, if you're starting a business, if you're new in business, I hope these tips and tricks have been very valuable to you. Feel free to leave us a comment below and subscribe to our channel. But until next time, thank you for joining the Secure the Perimeter podcast.